It was a little after 1:30 a.m. when I decided to go for a walk. I couldn't sleep, and that restless feeling had been building all night, like something pressing against my chest. My apartment was too quiet, the kind of silence that makes every small sound feel louder than it should be. I figured some fresh air would help. I grabbed my hoodie, checked that I had my phone and keys, and stepped outside into the cool night. The street was empty, which wasn't unusual for my neighborhood at that hour. A few streetlights flickered, casting long shadows across the pavement. There was a faint hum from distant traffic, but otherwise it was still. I started walking down the usual route I take during the day, past a row of identical houses and parked cars lining the curb. About 5 minutes in, I noticed how unusually quiet everything felt. Even the usual stray dogs that wander around at night weren't anywhere to be seen. I told myself I was just overthinking it. I kept walking, hands in my pockets, trying to relax. When I reached the corner near the small park, I slowed down. There was a single streetlight there, and it barely illuminated the entrance. That's when I noticed someone standing inside the park. At first, I thought it was just another late-night walker, but something felt off. The person wasn't moving. They were just standing there, near one of the benches, facing away from me. I stopped for a moment, watching them. It wasn't normal for someone to just stand completely still like that at this hour. I considered turning around, but I didn't want to seem paranoid. I kept walking, trying to act normal, but my eyes stayed on that figure. As I got closer to the park entrance, I realized the person hadn't shifted even slightly. No phone, no cigarette, nothing. Just standing there. I felt this sudden urge to cross the street, but before I could, the person slowly turned their head. Not their body, just their head, like they had been waiting for me to notice them. Even from that distance, I could tell they were looking directly at me. My stomach dropped. I looked away immediately and kept walking past the park, trying not to react. I told myself not to make eye contact again, not to give them any reason to approach me. But I could feel it, that heavy awareness that someone was watching me. I picked up my pace slightly. After about 20 steps, I couldn't help it. I glanced back. The person was no longer inside the park. For a second, I thought I had imagined them, but then I saw them standing on the sidewalk behind me, much closer than they should have been. There was no way they could have moved that fast without me hearing footsteps. My heart started pounding. I turned forward again and kept walking, faster now, trying to stay calm. Maybe they were just heading in the same direction, I told myself. But something didn't feel right. The distance between us had closed too quickly. I could hear faint footsteps now, matching my pace. I sped up again. The footsteps did too. That's when I decided to cross the street. I didn't even check for cars, just moved quickly to the other side. When I looked back again, the person had crossed too. That's when the panic really started to set in. I pulled out my phone, pretending to scroll, hoping they'd think I was about to call someone. The footsteps behind me slowed for a moment, then continued. I didn't want to run. Running would make it obvious I was scared, but every instinct in my body was telling me to get away. I kept walking until I reached a stretch of road where the streetlights were farther apart. The darkness between them felt heavier, like it swallowed everything in between. As I stepped into one of those darker patches, I noticed the footsteps behind me had stopped completely. I hesitated, then slowly turned my head. The street behind me was empty. Completely empty. The person was gone. No side streets, no alleys, nowhere they could have gone that quickly. I stood there for a few seconds, trying to process what I was seeing, or not seeing. My heart was still racing. I told myself maybe they ducked behind a parked car or something, but even that didn't make sense. I started walking again, slower this time, constantly glancing over my shoulder. Nothing. No one. Just the empty street stretching behind me. I tried to convince myself it was over, that I had just gotten worked up over nothing. But as I reached the next intersection, I saw something that made my stomach drop again. On the sidewalk ahead of me, under the next streetlight, there was a shadow moving. Not a person I could clearly see, just a long, distorted shadow stretching across the pavement, and it was moving toward me, even though there was no one there to cast it. I froze for a second, staring at that shadow as it stretched and shifted along the pavement under the streetlight. It didn't move like a normal shadow should. There was no body attached to it, no figure stepping into the light to create it. It just slid forward slowly, like something was approaching but staying just out of sight. My first instinct was to look around for any explanation. Maybe a passing car, maybe someone just outside the light. But the street was completely empty. No headlights, no movement, nothing. The only thing moving was that shadow, inching closer to where I stood. I took a step back without thinking. The shadow seemed to pause, then continued again, matching the direction I was facing. My chest tightened. I didn't want to wait and find out what was causing it. I turned around and started walking quickly in the opposite direction. I told myself not to run, but my pace kept increasing anyway. The quiet of the street suddenly felt suffocating. Every small sound, my shoes against the pavement, the faint rustle of leaves, felt amplified. After a few seconds, I risked a glance over my shoulder. The shadow was gone, but the street light ahead flickered once, then steadied. I slowed down slightly, trying to calm myself, but something felt wrong. That sense of being watched hadn't gone away. If anything, it felt closer now, like it was right behind me. I shoved my hands deeper into my hoodie pocket and kept moving. I decided to take a different route back home, thinking maybe a change of direction would shake whatever this feeling was. I turned onto a narrower street lined with older houses. Most of them were dark, curtains drawn, no signs of anyone awake. About halfway down, I heard it again, footsteps. Soft at first, but clear enough to make me stop. They stopped too. I turned slowly, scanning the street behind me. Nothing. No one. Just parked cars and dim streetlights. I stood there for a few seconds listening. Silence. I started walking again. A few steps later, the footsteps returned, perfectly in sync with mine. I stopped. They stopped. This time, I didn't turn around immediately. I just stood there, trying to listen more carefully. There was a faint shift in the air, like someone adjusting their stance right behind me. My skin went cold. I turned around quickly. Still nothing. No movement, no person, nothing out of place. I felt ridiculous, standing there in the middle of the street, but I couldn't shake the feeling. I decided to test it. I took one slow step backward. For a split second, I heard another step echo it. That was enough. I turned and started walking faster, not caring anymore if I looked paranoid. I just wanted to get home. As I reached the end of the street, I noticed one house with a porch light on. It was the only light in the entire block that looked warm, almost inviting. I considered walking up and knocking, just to be around someone else, but something held me back. Instead, I stayed on the sidewalk and kept moving. As I passed the house, I glanced toward the porch. That's when I saw someone sitting there. An older man, or at least that's what he looked like at first. He was sitting completely still in a chair, facing the street. I slowed down slightly, thinking maybe I could say something, maybe ask if he had seen anyone else around. But as I looked closer, something felt off. His posture was stiff, too stiff, like he hadn't moved in a long time. And then I realized, he wasn't looking at the street. He was looking directly at me. Even though his head hadn't turned, his eyes were fixed on me as I walked past. I felt that same drop in my stomach as before. I looked away immediately and kept going. I didn't want to engage, didn't want to give him any reason to speak. But as I passed the edge of the property, I heard a voice behind me. Quiet, almost flat. "You shouldn't be out this late." I stopped without meaning to. I didn't wait to understand it. The second I saw that empty chair, I turned and walked as fast as I could without breaking into a run. My chest felt tight, like I wasn't getting enough air, and I kept replaying what the man said in my head. "He's still here." The way he pointed at me. It didn't make sense, but it also didn't feel like something I could just ignore. I kept moving, taking turns I didn't usually take, trying to get back to a main road where there would at least be some traffic, some kind of normal activity. But every street I ended up on looked the same, quiet, empty, dimly lit. After a few minutes, I realized I hadn't seen a single car pass by since I left my apartment. Not one. That thought alone made everything feel more isolated. I slowed down slightly, trying to get my bearings, and that's when I noticed something else. My shadow. It was stretched out in front of me under the streetlight, long and thin like it should be. But when I took a step, it didn't move right away. It lagged, just slightly, like it was delayed by half a second. I stopped walking. The shadow took one more step before stopping too. I felt a cold rush go through me. I lifted my foot slowly and set it back down. This time, the shadow matched it perfectly, like nothing was wrong. I stood there, staring at it, trying to convince myself it was just the angle of the light, or my eyes playing tricks on me. But then it happened again. I shifted my weight, and the shadow hesitated before following. That was enough. I stepped out of the light completely and into the darker part of the street. For a moment, I couldn't see my shadow at all, and that somehow felt worse. I turned around, scanning the area behind me. Still nothing. No footsteps, no movement, no sign of anyone else. Just that same heavy silence pressing in from all sides. I pulled out my phone and checked the time, 2:07 a.m. I hadn't been out that long, but it felt like hours. I thought about calling someone, but I didn't even know what I would say. Instead, I opened the camera app and switched to the front camera, holding the phone up slightly as I walked. I don't know why I did it. Maybe I just wanted to see behind me without turning around. At first, everything looked normal. Just my face, a little pale, the dark street behind me. I kept walking, glancing between the screen and the path ahead. Then, for a split second, I saw something. Right over my shoulder. I stopped immediately and turned around. Nothing. The street was empty. I looked back at my phone, my hand shaking slightly, and slowly raised it again. This time, I stood still and adjusted the angle, trying to capture more of the background. For a few seconds, there was nothing. Then I saw it again. A shape. Not fully clear, but definitely there. It was standing directly behind me, close enough that if I reached back, I felt like I would touch it. I spun around again, faster this time. Still nothing. My breathing got heavier. I didn't want to look at the screen again, but I couldn't stop myself. I raised the phone one more time. The shape was closer now. I could make out more detail, not a face, not clearly, but something that resembled one. It wasn't looking at the camera. It was looking at me. I lowered the phone slowly, my hand trembling, and just stood there for a second. Then I did the one thing I had been trying not to do this whole time. I ran. I didn't care anymore. I sprinted down the street, turning corners at random, just trying to put as much distance between me and whatever this was. My footsteps echoed loudly, breaking the silence that had been following me all night. I didn't stop until I saw my apartment building at the end of the block. I rushed to the entrance, fumbled with my keys, and practically threw myself inside. The moment the door shut behind me, the noise of the outside world cut off completely. I leaned against the door, trying to catch my breath. The hallway lights buzzed faintly overhead. Everything inside felt normal again, or at least it should have. I walked quickly to my apartment, unlocked the door, and went inside, locking it immediately behind me. I checked the windows, made sure everything was secure, then finally let myself sit down. For a few minutes, I just stayed there, listening to my own breathing, waiting for my heart to slow down. Eventually, I convinced myself it was over. That whatever happened out there was done. I got up, went to the bathroom, and splashed some water on my face. When I looked up at the mirror, I froze. For a second, I thought it was just my reflection, but something was off. The timing. I blinked, but the reflection didn't blink right away. It was delayed, just like the shadow had been. I stepped back slowly, staring at it. Then, before I could move again, the reflection smiled. Not a normal smile, not something I was doing. It spread slowly across its face, wider than it should have been, while I stood there completely still. And just before I looked away, I heard a faint voice, not from the room, but from somewhere much closer, like it was right behind my ear. "You shouldn't have come back." I stood there for a few seconds, trying to process what I was seeing, or not seeing. My heart was still racing. I told myself maybe they ducked behind a parked car or something, but even that didn't make sense. I started walking again, slower this time, constantly glancing over my shoulder. Nothing. No one. Just the empty street stretching behind me. I tried to convince myself it was over, that I had just gotten worked up over nothing. But as I reached the next intersection, I saw something that made my stomach drop again. On the sidewalk ahead of me, under the next streetlight, there was a shadow moving. Not a person I could clearly see, just a long, distorted shadow stretching across the pavement, and it was moving toward me, even though there was no one there to cast it.